Welcome back to Echo Ridge and our continued destruction of the Australian Empire. To give you a quick recap, we're working on our domination victory utilizing our beautiful navy. In order to do that, you have to capture each civilization's capital. Right now we own two, the first being Kupes and the second being Jadwigas. Australia's capital was easy enough to capture, but it's posed quite some issues trying to keep it due to loyalty pressure. In that aim, we started capturing cities on the western part of the continent, next up being Sydney, which is going to be a pain considering it has 110 defense, but it's also 3 tiles off of the coast. Now, if we had some visibility, we could still strike it down, but we'd still need a land army to march in there. That's why I'm thinking maybe next should be Brisbane instead. Some other updates is we're about to settle yet another city because I suppose 23 is not enough. This one's going to be a huge oil production city. As soon as we get the offshore drilling, we have oil here and oil here, not to mention a couple of bonus resources in the form of crabs and fish. As for where the city is going to go itself, I think this is probably the better tile. They're both plains hills, but this one has access to the coral reef, which will provide an extra food to help it grow. We've also been fortuitous enough to get another great person. And this one's got a powerful ability. The Admiral Matthew Perry is going to grant us enough envoys to become a suzerain at a city-state. But here's where it's powerful. It then removes all the other players' envoys. You only have one action point to do this with, and it's going to have to be a coastal city-state because the Great Admiral needs to get to it. But looking at those city-states, it'd be really nice to be able to gain access to both Hunza and Leventa, because they are right next door to Amsterdam. But we still have 2 envoys in the bank, with more coming. So in order to take suzerain of Hunza, it's just a couple of spots, and now the city-state is ours, which will give us a little bit of vision over here. So I think in this case, we're going to send old Matthew Perry up towards Leventa. Speaking of Amsterdam and the Dutch, there is going to be some issues. Remember, we're starting to work on an air force, but apparently so are they. We have an aerodrome here, and I'm sure they're building another one somewhere closer to their capital. Oh, the lucky Dutch got a land-based oil resource. The closest one we got was right here, but it's further than 3 tiles away from any city we have. So in order to get access to it, we'd have to put a city somewhere in the snow. Same goes over here, and it's equally as unappealing. Speaking of defensive challenges, Nubia is going to pose more of a problem in the future than we originally thought. You can see that they're also starting to build aerodromes, but more is the fact that they are butted up right next to the western side of our civilization, which will be great for an easy launching point. That sword goes both ways. They will also be able to launch directly into our homeland, where our land armies are not nearly as strong. But not to worry for now, because we are concerning ourselves with Australia first. Another quick update is I changed the UI a little bit by expanding how big the minimap was. It was a little easier for me to be able to click around and get where we needed to go, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't too much of a nuisance for you, the viewer. After thinking about it for a little bit, I thought it might actually be nice, as you can now get a nice strategic view of the entire world. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Looks like this turn is going to be easy fare for us to once again take care of Canberra, and our ironclad swoops right in, and it'll end up rebelling in 2 more turns, where we will continue to rinse and repeat until we can build some better loyalty pressure here. We also have another promotion out of Joanne D'Angelo's battleship, and this is a big one because they're going to be getting +1 range, which means this battleship armada now has a range of 4, which oftentimes means they're going to be able to hit where they don't even have vision, which of course you can't do, but as long as you have vision, they'll be able to reach out and touch 4 tiles away. Another settler just popped out of Radom, except I don't remember why I created it. I know we were putting a city here, but I have no idea what else I was thinking, because it's been about a week since I've recorded on this series. Was I intending to send one down here? Or maybe I was trying to settle closer on this location. We have fresh water here, access to aluminum. I mean, that's not a bad city location, other than the fact that Nubia already has bought a lot of tiles here. Yeah, let's see what kind of problems we can cause. Also in Radom, we're getting the food markets. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but this greatly increases how much food this city's able to get, hence that late game surge in population across most of your cities. Oh, this U-boat armada is about to have some fun. There's a Nubian ironclad sitting here. I'm assuming they're about to try to take Brisbane as well. So I don't want to soften up too much to where they can then swoop right in and grab it. So we'll have to make sure that we're being very careful. Actually, I'm going to go raid this wonderful campus here. It already has a research lab and everything. We're going to be softening up all these digger armadas because they could also pose an issue. Maybe not right now, but if we do manage to keep Canberra, well, they'd have a definite ability to be able to take it back via land-based armies. So as a wonderful display of what 4-tile range is on a battleship, absolutely reaching out and touching people. We're still going to keep a couple of units here, plus an ironclad to be able to take Canberra every few turns, but we are going to bring the majority of our forces over here and start attacking into Brisbane. It's always a good day when 2 more battleship armadas finish up. Time to send these to the front lines? Absolutely. Over in our capital, we're going to start building up our Air Force by first building an airport, which is going to give our Air Force plus 50% combat experience for all air units trained in this city, plus another air slot. Not to mention even more production for the city, which really has gotten ridiculous at 122. Here's that big raid on the campus. That's 50 gold and 253 science. And we're going to be able to continuously raid it because it's a built-up campus with multiple buildings. We've completed combustion, which means we now have access to tanks, which is always a nice thing, except for the fact they also require oil. But not a big deal. We're 5 turns away from getting the offshore oil rigs, and we have a lot of them around our empire, so we're really going to start ramping up that oil production. I brought this military engineer over here outside the city of Opango because I wanted to start building airstrips here. The issue is it's not really letting me. The only requirement is it has to be flat terrain, which this tile is. My guess is it's because there's an antiquity site here. To check this theory, we're going to go down here to this plains, and all it has is a farm, and see if it'll allow us to build it here, which is going to be great because bombers sitting in this tile will be able to reach out and touch all the way over here. As expected, Canberra's flipped again, which I'm thinking that's when these diggers are going to walk in there and try to take it. Also of note, they're starting to produce infantry, which are decently strong. I'm going to see what kind of problems this barbarian can cause the Australian folks, and we'll keep beating up on them like this. I do need to remember to keep this great admiral attached at the hip. Really helps with combat effectiveness, because for all naval units, in this case industrial and modern era naval units within 2 tiles, they get +5 combat strength and +1 movement. We've unlocked resource management, which will give all of our aluminum and oil resources an additional resource per turn. I'm just not sure which one I want to take out. I don't think we're going to be upgrading many units right now, so maybe force modernization. Worst comes to worst, we can change up the policies once we research another civic. I think in this case, we're going to go towards cultural heritage because it'll give us another 3 envoys, which is great. And then after that, we're going to be heading towards one of these late game governments because I would love to have these 5 wildcard slots. Here's the 3rd raid on this same campus district for another 50 gold and 259 science. It's doing things like this, which have caused us to be able to catch up massively in the science game. Nubia has now only researched 53 techs, and we are right behind them at 51. But you can see our science per turn is 233 compared to their 248. Yet we're still making headway, doing things like raiding campus districts. And once again, the capital goes down. I really wish there was a way we could keep this city, but they're losing 29 loyalty per turn. That's the reason why it flips in 2 turns every single time. There's policies you could put in play, and we could throw a governor in there, and we could reduce this to probably 4 or 5 turns, but still nowhere near where it needs to be. And you may also be wondering, why do I keep flipping it back? Well, because if I don't, it will definitely flip to Australia, and that'll just cause more problems than it's worth. Delmuca's battleship has also now received the +1 range. All of our units are so ridiculously upgraded because of how much combat they've been in. And even in places where there is no combat, for instance, Whiskey T. Fox battleship is continuously leveling up just because we're sitting in the city bombarding Australia's encampment here. which still gives you the +6 experience. Well, here goes this small city here. And even by founding Augsburg right here, we still don't gain access to this tile, which is really unfortunate. Because it's so late game, though, we do start with defensive capabilities, so we can finally clear up these barbarians that have been sitting there for a long time. Another great thing about founding cities in the late game is, well, you can just sort of build them up with cash. We're going to be able to buy a monument, buy a granary, and buy a builder. And the builder will go around and upgrade everything we need. Here's another military emergency because, of course, the entire world hates us. We are losing way too many diplomatic favor per turn, so we don't have any voting power, despite the one vote that you get for free. But at this point, these military emergencies are not passing. What I'm guessing it's because the rest of the AIs are like, no, we'd rather not mess with them. But on that diplomatic favor, I told you we were losing so much per turn. Well, most of it's because we're occupying original capitals and we're sustaining a -8 from a carbon emissions penalty. Oops. Sorry about all the factories, people. We have finished plastics due to a 4th raid on that campus. And what's a little hidden benefit that you don't realize? Another reason why your cities grow so well in the late game? Yeah, we got the offshore oil rig. That's all fine and good. But every single one of our fishing boats just got an upgrade across the board for another food. But now it's time to get all of these oils online. So I think we're going to spend a massive amount of money on some builders here. Just realized I could build a food market here as well. I mean, we might as well. It's only 1,500 gold. So once I went down to this plains and then removed the farm manually, it gave us the ability to build the airstrip, which gives us an inspiration for rapid deployment. And now I think I'll send this engineer somewhere else. And that way we can do the same thing, probably over here, I suppose. By building airstrips means you don't have to actually build aerodomes. All right, this is getting absurd. We're going to start building bombers out of Berlin as well, but we've just completed another 2 German battleship armadas. We'll get them to join up with the fleet over here. I wouldn't normally be this haphazard with all of our ships being over here. I'd keep some in the defense of Germany. Unfortunately, we've pretty much wiped most of the enemy AI's navy out. You can see the only person with a strong military presence is Australia. And they can't get a foothold into the oceans because, well, we own them all. So all they keep doing is churning out diggers, which, yeah, it gives them a very strong military score and military strength, but doesn't do anything for them protecting their cities. A bunch of good news happened this turn. We have now finished combined arms, which means we have access to the destroyer, so we can upgrade all those ironclads, and the wonderful aircraft carrier. This is when it's going to get nuts. We've also discovered uranium. I'm interested to see if we found any. Here's one for Nubia. Here's another for Nubia. There's one for the Dutch. There's one for Coupe, who we might have to wipe off of the map just to get access to. And then here's one way up to the deep north. So unfortunately, no uranium for the German Empire, which could be bad. If they get uranium, means they can get access to giant death robots. And based on the pacing of how long this is taking, means it would further extend this game out, because fighting through giant death robots is a pain. More great news is we now have a golden atomic era. Unfortunately, the Dutch also are in a golden age and the Australians are in a heroic age. So loyalty issues around here aren't going to change too much. I'm thinking about getting 2 arms because it'll unlock a casus belli, which will generate 75% less grievances than formal wars and can be used immediately after denouncing the target. That sounds like something we'll make use of. I think next we're going to go into telecommunications so we can get access to the nuclear submarine. We're also wanting some jet bombers because that'll make our bombers even better. So maybe let's go synthetic materials into stealth tech. Here's that first upgrade now. Because I did end up flipping the 50% discount for strategic resources and gold, the destroyer is only going to cost us 495 gold and 2 oil. We'll get some era score because it looks like we're the first one to own a unit using oil. Very nice. Here's another one. Matthew Perry's finally made it to Leventa, and it doesn't look like they necessarily have to be right on the coast because the range of their effect can go a little bit further inward. But now we're going to push this button, and Leventa has declared war on Australia because we now are suzerain of them. And you can see they're only influenced by one civilization. After I throw our last envoy into Samarkand, we now have suzerainty of every single city-state except for Yerevan, but we'll start steamrolling into it as well. We also have the world's first flying unit, and it's a bomber. Isn't history wonderful? And don't worry about the oil. After a few turns of throwing down offshore platforms, we're now up to 16 oil per turn. We don't have any uranium, but we have a ton of oil to make up for it. And it looks like Brisbane will be going down either this turn or maybe the next. It helps that we have such great range. With that first bomber completed, we can now rebase them. But there is a range on how far you can rebase, so we can't go directly to Opango. But that's going to be okay, because we're not going to be rebasing them for now. We're just going to wait until we get aircraft carriers, and then put them on aircraft carriers and send them over there. And here goes Brisbane. I'm going to try to capture Canberra on the same turn, but it looks like the destroyer is somewhat out of position, so I'm going to have to do it next turn. Right now, it says rebellion in 3 turns, which actually is a positive sign. I'm going to take Reina, who's been chilling out in Kube's old capital, and reassign them to Brisbane and see if this helps at all. All right, now it says 4 turns. We'll see what happens when we take Canberra as well. I'm also going to try a Limitani policy. We unlocked another military policy because of our Golden Age selection. All it takes is a garrisoned unit, which the Armada should count as, but this is still rebellion in 4 days. Next turn, we're going to get to test our theory. Now it's rebellion in 6 turns over in Brisbane and 9 turns in Canberra. I'm going to try to getting another governor over here, possibly Amani. We'd lose suzerainship of Hunza because we would lose the 2 envoys that Amani provides. But as soon as we get more envoys, we can bump it back up and grab it. And the reason being is because if we can promote Amani, the emissary promotion gives other cities within 9 tiles not owned by you to lose 2 loyalty per turn, which is, pretty good. And just like that, Canberra is now fully loyal. Brisbane's going to be a problem, but we'll keep working on it. I'm also going to repair the monument here because it'll provide another loyalty point, which might be able to push a little bit more pressure over here. Worst comes to worst, I may have to start building a land-based army just to go take Sydney, or we can do it with the bombers and the aircraft carriers that are being produced as we speak. Speaking of aircraft carrier production, there's an interesting little note. Each aircraft carrier carries a set amount of aircraft. It doesn't matter if it's an armada or a single aircraft carrier. The only thing that helps is their melee strength will be a little bit stronger. But notice that the aircraft capacity still stays the same at 2. So in this case, it makes more sense just to produce single aircraft carriers, at least for our purposes of getting bombers over to the front line. Oh, this is really not good. Nubia has nuclear submarines. I'm considering pivoting from domination, only because I know from experience how long it's actually going to take, for instance, to start taking over most of Denmark. By then it's going to be another 50 turns, and who knows what Nubia is going to be sitting on. I don't know. Her first 2 aircraft carriers have been completed, so it's time to start loading up bombers. Easy rebase there. We've got another one over here, and our first aircraft carrier can report to the front lines. Now I can sit here, bomb Sydney, and then just walk in there with a military unit, which is exactly what we're going to do. Unfortunately, though, it takes 12 turns for them to get there. Needless to say, this game is going on a lot longer than I had expected to. Turn 282, I should have already won this. But hey, like I said, I was knocking some rust off. So here's how this works. I have a tank here who's just going to pop out of Brisbane every single turn, while the bombers are able to attack Sydney. 39 defense. So brilliant. Now obviously this will still take a little bit of time with only 2 bombers, but more are coming. And then at the end of the turn, the tank just, goes back. That way Sydney can't attack it directly. It's only been, I think, 2 or 3 turns since we started our assault, and we might be able to take Sydney this turn. We're going to see. I'm going to start with my battleship bombardments. There's so many battleships. Notice each one takes about 12 defenses off the walls of the city, but when you hit it with a bomber, bombers go big time. minus 49 defenses. And just like that, I believe Sydney is ours. In other exciting news, it looks like we killed a Nubian spy in our capital. We're definitely going to keep Frida there to make sure that we're continuously counter-spying. And after we move a governor there, all of our cities on this continent are now in positive loyalty pressure. So I think our war with Australia can be 100% done. Next up is the Dutch. I think we're going to start by hitting Utrecht and then coming over into Amsterdam. I have a feeling since Eindhoven is here that we'll have enough loyalty pressure to keep Utrecht. Then we can take Amsterdam and see if that holds. After that, all that's left is Nubia. And just like in Utrecht and Amsterdam, we have a couple of spies operating in there. And this spy here is getting embedded in the commercial hub, which gave us more visibility. And yet we still can't see their capital. Nubia looks like they benefited from the most inland capital of every enemy civilization in the game. So good for them. I tell you what though, just looking at the minimap, you can sort of see that the sun doesn't really set on the German Empire. And you thought that was the Roman Empire. Au contraire. I had a great time in this episode. I hope you did too, and I'll talk to you soon.